Hey, I'm going to talk about the seven main components that Truby talks about in his book. These are found in, well, all stories in general, but he lists them in a way and explains them in a way of what makes these mechanical things work properly for better stories. The first one is character. It's the most important. Each character has, or has to have, a specific function in the story. It could be a plot device, they could be providing a MacGuffin, a means of opening a door so the protagonist can walk through. That's a bare necessity. Each should be connected to each other. They have to be connected in some way with at least one form of conflict between them. So here we have the functional usage of main character, side character, one conflict between them. Side character has to do something for the plot, also has to have one conflict between the protagonist. As well, they should have some sort of contrast. That's sort of given when you have a conflict. But this can be a contrast in ideology, in morals, ethics, psychology, whatever. Too often people create characters and they throw in all these properties and elements and backstory, and you're like, who cares? Exactly. Don't do that. Each should be a version of the protagonist. So when we look at the example that John likes is Tootsie. The theme of Tootsie is how men treat women. How poor they do that. But while that's the main concern of the protagonist, it's also variations of that theme in every other character in the story. So you'll see how women treat men and how they're good and bad, and vice versa. So that really makes a great main theme because it's being resounded everywhere. But it's really just taking the philosophy or the ideology of Michael and Tootsie and giving it a different slant and seeing how that works and explains it totally shows why Michael is the protagonist. When we talk about the main theme, we're talking about the moral attitude. According to John's definition of theme. I'm going to argue about this later because it's their second point, but it's essentially morals, and morals are how you relate to other in public. So each should be a part of a character web. He uses his technique called four-corner opposition, where you have the protagonist and the antagonist at the top, and you have two other characters, side characters or whatnot, and they are in conflict with each other. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Each of them has their own conflict with each other, at least one kind of conflict. That's what he's going for. I'm not going to go into that right now. It's a complicated topic, but that's the general idea. You have characters that have a function. They resound the theme based on the protagonist, and they have conflict with that, or with each other. So the protagonist is the best, the most ideal, the most interesting character for the role of protagonist, not for the role of the story or the character of the story, but for the role of what you want to do with this dude. Every scene, the protagonist should be fascinating. It doesn't matter if he's a genius or a schmuck. It doesn't matter. Something about this character in every scene you see him in is doing something that's wants you to pay attention. It could be brutal, it could be nice, it doesn't matter. It's whatever you want to create him as. And the reason why we do these things, all this writing is up to a point, is their character growth. So the moral issue with the character, the protagonist, is a flaw. He's behaving improperly. And there's two kinds of flaws. There's moral and there's psychological. Moral, again, affects everyone else. Psychological is internal. So you have to figure out first where they're going. It's like saying if you're going to go to Ottawa, I live in Toronto, so if I go to Ottawa, I have to know where exactly in Ottawa, how I'm going to get there, how long it's going to take, blah, 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 blah. It's the same with your character. You have to know where he's going first. And that way, you know you're never going to get lost between the start of the story and his revelation. So that's the third thing you write, is your character's revelation. You have your premise, you have your designing principle, and then you go, okay, I want a character who does this. Boom. And that's the focus. That's why the theme is so important. So when we think of the antagonist, he's the central conflict between the protagonist. It could be anything. Think of them as the protagonist the same way we just described every character in the story as a version of the protagonist. And they are, they're very similar. They both want the same thing. They have a desire line. They're in conflict for some reason, whatever that reason is. And one of the problems that Truby brings up is that, well, how do you get these two people that dislike each other? Why are they coming together all the time? So you have to have a good reason for that. Setting reason, a plot reason, any kind. Now I'm going to describe some of my things that I think are important. The protagonist, the antagonist, the characters, all of them, they should have definitive ideologies, likes, dislikes, they're all in conflict. But if you describe them saying, John likes running and he likes shooting things and he really does not like ice cream, well, you're going to have to show John running and shooting things, and then you're going to have a scene of him dealing with ice cream in some way. Or you shouldn't have it in the story. It's that simple. It's like a Chekhov's gun for exposition. Don't waste my time. Give me something to work with. Give me something to expect, to see how, to anticipate what's going to happen. Another great idea, this is I like from Truby, is to identify with the character, but not all the way. So make him human, make him relatable, but only in a surface way or a simple way that the average person say, okay, yeah, he's this kind of role or this kind of dude. If you do it too much, it's either not believable because you're connecting with this guy on every level, which I would say is not bad, because I really can't believe you can relate to a dude on paper so easily. But you don't want to go all the way because this guy is flawed. So if you can relate to this dude on all these positive things, like, oh, he's fantastic, there's going to be no opportunity for you to care about their change later. The hero has to have a central problem they need to solve. Now, this is where I differ from John, because the problem is not the plot or the desire line. The problem is like the start of the story. The protagonist is doing something. He's on the scene. He's running around or whatever. That's the problem. Now, dramatically, we can think of that as the inciting incident. It could just be an intro. It should be connected to the desire line, but it's really up to you. So there's all kinds of ways you can go with it. There's so many ways to introduce or to start a story or to introduce characters. So yeah, it's up to you for that one. I'm not too sure. The two things you should be avoiding, though, are what's referred to as the Mary Sue and the internal antagonist. Now, the Mary Sue, as we know, if you don't know, is a character who is the best at everything, can solve any problem, can deal with any issue. And it's the same for an antagonist. If you have an antagonist who's a Mary Sue or just the best at everything, they're going to steamroll your protagonist. There's going to be no reason. At the same time, you don't want to have a protagonist who's stronger than the antagonist. It's like they have no growth. There's nothing for them to be. They're perfect. There's nothing for them to do, morally or psychologically. So you have to find, usually, even in comic books, other stories with action, you have an antagonist who's greater in a lot of ways. And when you have these dudes, protagonist, antagonist, other characters, they should have their own point of revelation as well. That's what makes a really great story. You identify with the bad guy or the good guy or whatever moral issue is happening in your story, and they also have the revelation, and maybe their revelation comes too late. Maybe it comes out with too high a price. It comes from the protagonist's actions. That's how you connect. So it's kind of like having little mini revelations for other characters. And the internal antagonist, this is what Truby refers to as, I can't recall exactly how he phrased it, but it's kind of like the kiss of death. The antagonist is not the protagonist. If you have internal problems, those are called moral issues or psychological issues. Those are what they should remain. You're not fighting yourself. You don't suddenly solve your psychological issues and you can do anything in the rest of the story, and your desire line gets achieved. You defeat the antagonist, and the world is all rainbows and puppies. No, it's only a desire line, the goal of the plot, and your moral and psychological needs. That's it. All right, the second major component is the theme. This is semantics between Truby and myself. He will call the theme the moral vision or the moral argument. This is how we deal with others. I will say the theme is the majority of action in a story. The main theme is just 51% of what's going on. So he'll say it's not about content. A lot of writers will say it is. I go by the Marshall McLuhan definition. The medium is the message. So anything that you render on the screen, anything you type on the page is content. And the moral vision is not like the good thing. It is within the lore of your story. So take, I'm trying to think of science fiction. Take of the Chronicles of Riddick. At the end of the story, I can't remember the exact phrase of the tagline, but it was like, you keep what you kill. And up to that point, everyone around him is his enemy. And because he defeats the main bad guy, everyone sees that and says, oh, yeah, you're in charge now. Because you keep what you kill. So it doesn't have to be this morally pleasant thing all the time. You could be morally repugnant. It depends on your character. And if your protagonist is the most interesting character, he could have several flaws. He can be a really bad dude. And maybe he only solves one of them. Still a pretty disgusting fellow, but that's the character he wanted to write. That's totally fine. The theme is also expressed, if we're going by Truby's definition again, through structure and style. So what's structure and style? That's a whole other topic. To put it simply, it's how you write. Related very closely to the designing principle. And how you write, well, you'll figure that out yourself. Comes about through your language, through your vocabulary, through your manners, how you do dialogue. Structure and style are really the same thing. The third thing, the component of a story, is the story world or the setting. The story world is always an outgrowth of the protagonist, not the other way around. Remember, character's number one. You write a story for your character to grow into something. Think of it like a path. You're literally going down this path, and now you want to make sure each cobblestone he walks on defines that character. So you have to put him in situations where he is in conflict, and don't just have scenes because you like your setting so much, and it's amazing. It's like, no. The protagonist is amazing, and the world revolves around him. Not in a oh wow, everything's just happening. No. Everything in the story world's happening for your protagonist to challenge themselves. That's how they're defined. That's it. The next one is the symbol web. This is a bit more complicated. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it connects the characters and their plots, connects the story world, and it's sort of a deeper, higher level way of looking at elements of a story that have a certain function. For example, a detective fiction story, you really have to pay attention to clues, but you don't know exactly what the clues are. But if you're a nice writer who writes detective fiction, you will have a symbol that stands out for some reason. It's repeated It could be a visual cue, it could be a dialogue cue, it could be anything. It's something which is repeated that says, hey, this has a layer of meaning you're not paying attention to. And if you only were clever enough, in a detective fiction novel at least, you would say, oh, you're right, this will connect me to other things that have more meaning to them. You can do this poetically. It's done in all sorts of stories, but it's sort of like a garnish on top of the existing things. So right now we're going into higher level things. So we have a character, we have theme, we have the story world or the setting. Now we're going into symbols. Now the fifth one he describes is plot. I would put this with character, but it should have its own category, I presume. So the plot is what the protagonist and the antagonist desires. This is also referred to as the character want, or the desire line. My definition of plot, I go from E.M. Forster, which is the why, or the motivation. These are just semantics. The effects are really the same. The plot connects all the events in the story, connects all the characters in the story, much like the symbol web can, with one symbol, if you want to be simple about it. And it tells us that what we're going for has to have some meaning. Even if the character does not achieve his goal, there has to be meaning to be found there. So it has to be logical. If he does not achieve his goal, he has to say, I can't do it. I got to do something else. Because as soon as the desire is gone or achieved, the story is over. So that's the last thing to happen. One of the last things to happen in a story next to the epilogue. Before that, right before that, or maybe even slightly before, or before all this, get to the climax of the drama here, the theme of desire, the need from desire, which is the moral need or the psychological need, has to be achieved. They have to go through their character growth, and then they get to their want. I guess you could, if you want to be fancy, you could do it backwards. That's going to be very strange, because then you're literally telling the audience, nope, the story is not about the want. It's really about this need. So what order you do that is very important. Typically, the need comes first, and then the want. And one thing important about plot, which Truby also shares with me, is that the average audience member, meaning anyone watching the surface of things, needs to know why the protagonist is doing what they're doing. Always. Every single scene that we connect. So here's scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, have to know why they're there, what they're doing. Why they're there, what they're doing. And it should all neatly connect very clearly. That's very important. You want to have meaning in a story. The goal of the story, you want to make logical sense. You want to make moral sense. You want all these things to come out of your character, and that's achieved through their conflicts and their resolutions from that. The sixth component is a scene weave. It's very much like storyboarding. You're listing all the scenes of a story. This is, again, before you do any writing. You're seeing how things connect. So you take a plot, subplots. If you have more than one plot, now's a good time to cut it and figure out why you have or why you need so many plots. Is how complicated is your story going to be with all these characters? And of course the theme, or the themes. Themes you could have multiple of. Plot lines, not a good idea. And this is all related to the theme of how it's expressed and when, and the storyline of how it's expressed and when. By storyline I mean, is it linear? Is it branching? Is it explosive? These are terms that Truby refers to, and unless you know how to go about doing that, branching is probably the most branching you could do with subplots, because they eventually have to come from the main desire line, and either they connect back or they just die where they are. So it's usually related to sub-characters or side characters. And there has to be a reason why you do that. And that's why you have a scene weave, so you could show it and say, oh, this is where this happens. I already know where my protagonist is going to have his revelation. I can do as many of these as I need to get there. Stumbling blocks, asides. Sides aren't very good, but there has to be a reason for them, and that's where you figure them out before you write them. And the seventh is the scene construction. So now we've had a diagram where we've said, okay, we're going to have this scene, we're going to have that scene, and aside for whatever reason. We're going to now construct that. Now he also combines that with what's called symphonic dialogue. I have no idea what that is, even though I read the story or his book. But what we have to keep in mind is when we have these scenes, you say, okay, this scene develops the protagonist how? This scene develops the antagonist how? This scene develops the side character how? And with symphonic dialogue, I'm trying my best here, you're blending the symbolism that you've constructed from your symbol web to have multiple meanings in conversations. And this must work with the theme. Like, there's no real reason why you would not include the moral need or the psychological need. It won't connect either. I can't see how you connect it either way. You can't just talk about a separate ideology, which is not the main need of the story for the protagonist. The example I like is from Babylon 5. There's a scene where the main character, Sheridan, is going to die. And that's his revelation. That is his need. He has this need to do something for others, and he realizes he can't do it, or he can't do it alone. And his wife tells him from her culture that they watch people when they sleep, and she says, if you were to fall out of bed, I will catch you. This is also a scene where Sheridan has literally fallen to his death, and he's not sure what to do, and he's still somehow alive, and we're not sure what's going on. But it's not about the logic or the empirical belief of what's going on. It's about him as a character and what it means to keep going and why he's doing it. And that's one of the key points of the whole story is that revelation he has. So, to summarize, there's character, which is the most important part of any story. There's theme, which is the moral or psychological need. Mostly the moral need. You're not going to tell a singular story about one dude having a psychological problem. So it's going to involve other people. There's the story world or setting, all of which are outgrowths of the protagonist. You write a story for a character, not for a setting. You're telling a different story there. You're telling me a travel brochure or something. A symbol web connects things to find meaning and relationships between those things. Visually, audio, dialogue, whichever. Plot and character are interrelated. The character want, the desire line, the scene weave. Look at all the scenes of the story, see how they're connected, and then the scene construction and the symphonic dialogue, which I can't really comment too much on because I'm not too clear about that myself. So thank you very much.